Hey, what's up, guys? It's Kelvin from the Real Mensters, and I'm really excited today to bring you guys a new series that I've been working on for a while called Their DigiDestiny. The idea is that it's a deck challenge, and the rules are pretty simple. Basically, you're just taking a Tamer and their partner Digimon and building a deck around them. You have to have at least 2 copies of the Tamer and 2 copies of every available level of that Digimon from level 2 to level 7. And when I say every available level, what I mean is, for example, if you were doing an Izzy and Tentomon deck, you would not currently be able to use a level 2 Digimon because Motimon is not in the game right now. And in addition, there is no level 7 currently based on Tentomon, so you wouldn't have to use those, but you would have to use everything else from 3 to 6. Keep in mind, you don't have to use every copy of that Digimon, so you don't have to use all the Tentomons, all the Mega Kabuterimons, all the Hercules Kabuterimons. You would just need to use at least 2 copies of any Digimon that reasonably evolves from them. Now, when I say reasonably evolves from them, what I mean is, for example, Angemon can become Magna Angemon, and then it could become Seraphimon, or it could become Goldramon, or it become Slash Angemon, or Clavis Angemon. Those are all acceptable evolution targets. But you can't do something like wacky and say, well, technically Angemon evolves into Angewomon in certain digital pet games, therefore I'm going to use Angewomon as the ultimate in that deck. You can't do that. So in addition to meeting all of those parameters, the goal is also to build a competent deck. And when I say a competent deck, what I mean is a deck that runs relatively smoothly, and you could take it to locals and have a decent shot at taking the whole thing. It doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be something that's going to get you top 8 at a large PPG event. It just has to be something you can play and stand a reasonable chance of winning matches here and there. So, with all of that in mind, let's go ahead and jump right into Tai Kamiya's DigiDestiny. Alright, so I'm going to start off a little non-traditionally, because I think in this deck it's really important to talk about this card first. And that's going to be 3 copies of Tai Kamiya, the Memory Tamer. Now, the reason that this is so important is twofold. First, in this deck, you're going to have a lot of 3-cost Digimon, so you really want to make sure that when your turn comes up, you're able to evolve and swing. Because if you can't do that, then you're just going to be passing to your opponent, they're going to choke you, and you're not going to be able to make your big plays. The other thing is that it's giving your red Digimon security attack +1 if they have at least 4 Digivolution cards under them. This is important because the deck is really going to be trying to abuse bonus security attack effects. And you'll see more of that later on. It's not necessarily that there are a bunch of effects that give plus security attack. It's trying to make sure that it can fully resolve effects that give plus security attack. And so this tie helps to give that plus security attack without having you put too much of that onto your Digimon themselves. And so that's why this card's going to be super important. So next up, we're also going to do our options, and it's going to just be 4 copies of Gaia Force. This is not a surprise to anyone, I'm sure. It's not that it's a 4 Greymon themed option, although of course it is. It's just that this is, the best option in the game right now, arguably, and it's just so powerful, and in red you pretty much have to run 4 of it, so that's why it's here. Then we're going to go ahead and move on to the eggs. So we're looking at 4 copies of Koromon. The reason we're doing Koromon at 4 is because we really want to make sure that we're giving our level 6s plus 1000 DP. And the reason we're making sure that we're giving them that is because, again, we're trying to resolve these plus security attack effects, and we don't want to get killed in security by an Omnimon or a Plesiomon or anything like that. So that's why we're running these Koromons, to try to help mitigate those situations. And so then, in addition, we're running 1 copy of Yokomon, because you gotta have another egg, and Babydamon doesn't do anything in this deck because it doesn't run piercing, so Yokomon's really the only choice. Once Gigimon comes out, then that's gonna be a complete game changer for the deck, but for now, it's gotta be Yokomon. So next, we're going to do 2 copies of Biomon, 2 copies of Monodramon. Now, I know that the conventional wisdom right now is you want to run 6 vanilla rookies, but in this deck, I think that it's just too important to have your rookies have really good inheritables, and you'll see why, again, as we're going forward. And so I made the call to cut it down to just 4 of the rookies. And of course, we're running the 2-2 split to help play around Omnimon. So with that being said, you already saw a sneak peek of the next one, and this one's not going to surprise anyone. We're looking at 4 copies of Agumon. Now, this is a great card, plus 1000 DP. Again, we're talking about that DP gain, so we really want to get that, but also it's Tai's little buddy Agumon. We gotta run him, so we're running him at 4 because he's just really good for what the deck's trying to do. In addition, we're running 2 copies of Guilmon because it's the same effect, except later in the game once there's 5 cards in the trash. You just really want that plus 1000. You want to resolve it as much as possible. That's why I put these in over the other 2 vanillas. And so you're probably thinking, what are the final 4 rookies? Because of course I'm going to run 14 rookies. I'm running 4 copies of Agumon. The promo one that gives plus 2000 DP. It's probably not a huge shock to anyone, but it's really good for this deck because it's mostly going to be running Greymons, especially at level 5. And so, also just to clarify, that's plus 2000 DP if this is under a Greymon Digimon. So it has to have Greymon in its name to get the plus 2000 DP. And so next after that, we're going for level 4. We're going to be running 4 copies of Cordramon. Again, this is not a surprise to anyone, I'm sure. You have to run 4 blockers in pretty much every deck so that your opponent doesn't just run you over and win before you can do anything. And in particular, this deck takes a little time to set up sometimes, so you want to try to have a blocker out to help keep you alive. After that, we're also looking at 4 copies of Dark Tyrannomon. The reason Dark Tyrannomon's in here is because this deck struggles a little with memory efficiency, so it's just really important to have something that you can, drop and evolve into really quick. And even if you start out like your turn just hatching, you can go, since you're going to start at 1, you can go into an Agumon, go into a Tyrannomon, and you still have the memory left to go into an ultimate, even if you started at 1 memory. So it's just really important to have something cheap that helps you bridge the gap to your level 5s, because your level 5s are really where the deck starts to shine. And you'll see that shortly. But first, last 4 level 4s, 4 copies of the Booster Greymon. Anyone who knows me knows that I prefer this well over the starter deck Greymon that gives the plus security attack. I think this plus 2000 DP is just so clutch, and it helps in so many more situations, because the thing is that plus security attack is cool and all, except that, I don't know about you, but for me, I usually don't fully resolve it. After the first check, something kills me, it's bigger than me. It doesn't matter how big I try to make my Digimon, the opponent's always somehow got something bigger in there, or they have an option to kill it, or whatever the case may be. So I'd rather just go for the consistency play and get those Greymons in there so that I can actually resolve the multiple checks. I don't have as many extra checks in the deck, but the checks that I do have are more likely to be successful. And so, that said, we'll move on to the level 5s. So we're going to look at 4 copies of Metal Greymon, the Memory Borrower. Again, probably not a surprise to a lot of people, because this is really popularized by Steven Rodriguez, True Champion Steven, shout out to him. And it's just such a good card. It allows you to make crazy extensions of plays, because you swing with it, get 3 memory. If you have another level 4 on board, you evolve that into a level 5. If it's another Metal Greymon, you can swing again. You can just do crazy stuff. And then when you owe your opponent that memory at the end of the turn, you just make a really big play. You drop something that's, you drop a level 6 from your hand, you Gaia Force, you just do something big and basically deny your opponent of that memory. So it's less of a memory borrower and more of a memory stealer if you can pull it off right. So that's just super clutch. And again, like with Tai, you really want to make sure you have access to that 3 memory. That way you can go into your level 6 and still have, in a pinch situation, still have the memory to go into Omnimon that turn if you need to. And then we have 2 copies of Skull Greymon. His effect on play, delete one of your opponent's blockers. So this thing is just really nice for this deck, because again, even though we haven't really seen it too much yet, we are trying to resolve additional security attacks, and one thing your opponent's gonna do is try to stop you from doing that with blockers. So if you can just drop this and kill one of their blockers, you're also now setting yourself up to evolve him next turn, because if you've got Tai in play to give the +3 memory, then you'll be able to evolve him into one of your level 6s and swing for an additional security attack. So it really sets that up. Even better if you have another level 5 in play already, one that's stacked up with your inheritables. And so finally, we're going to be playing 2 copies of this, which is honestly one of my favorite cards in this deck. And that's going to be the Virus Metal Greymon. And just for those who maybe aren't familiar with him because he's not played as much, he is 3 to evolve, 9,000 DP, 8 cost to hardcast. He has security attack +2, and when he attacks, you lose 5 memory. In addition, his inheritable is this Digimon gets plus 3,000 DP. So, you know, a lot of people think he's not that good, and in some ways he's really not. Like, oftentimes you're not trying to swing with him, even though he does have that huge security attack +2, because at 9,000, you're probably gonna die if you're checking that many security. And I've definitely been in situations where I swung with him even at like 10,000, and like the first thing I hit was a 12k vanilla level 6, and he died, and I just gave my opponent, you know, 5 memory for free. So you don't want to see him too often, and when you do see him, you don't necessarily want to attack with him all the time, but you can get to some really crazy levels with him. So for example, if I'm evolving him on top of Greymon and this Agumon, then he's suddenly a 13k. That means he can even get over all of the 12k vanilla. So you swing, and you actually have a very good chance of not dying as long as you don't hit Gaia Force. Gaia Force is always going to ruin your day, and there's not much you can do about that currently. But with that being said, you can also just leave him on the board and don't swing with him. If your opponent has a blocker, you just have him there to put pressure on your opponent, and then you swing with the smaller Digimon, because your opponent then has to choose, do I want to let the small guy through and lose that security, or do I want to block it and then I'm leaving myself open to get hit by Metal Greymon? So I think that that's really the value of that security attack +2, is just making your opponent reconsider blocking your smaller Digimon while you try to steal some cheeky little damage. But what's really important is that plus 3,000 DP, and you're about to see why. So, in terms of our level 6s, the first that we run is 3 copies of Volcanic Dramon. And no, it's not a Greymon, it's not part of this line, it's just that one, you gotta respect Rookie Rush because it's just so strong in the meta right now. So you want a way to make sure that you can counter it if it comes up, as well as any other decks that are just trying to rush you down or swarm you. It's really good because you invest a lot into your Digimon in this deck. So you can play this if your opponent is sitting on a Devimon, so that you can kill that so it doesn't hit you with retaliation when you start swinging with your big guys. So that's really nice. Also, he's got security attack +1 inherent, so that means that if I evolve him on, say, my Metal Greymon, now instead of being a 10,000 DP Digimon, he's a 13,000 DP Digimon. So he swings in, and I'm getting security attack +1 and 13k. Again, most things aren't killing me. And if I can get Greymon under him and like Koromon under him, then he's a 16k. I'm not even losing to Omnimon. So it's just really good, and it's really scary for your opponent to see this guy with Metal Greymon under him, because now they really need to block it, or they're gonna take a major hit. And even better is if, you know, you got a full chain up to him and you've got Tai there, now he's just a huge threat. That being said, though, the main star of the show is of course going to be War Greymon. And the reason we opt for the booster War Greymon over the starter War Greymon is for 2 reasons. First, it's because the starter War Greymon costs 4 to evolve, which means even with Tai in play, there's no guarantee that you're going to have enough memory to evolve and keep your turn. So it gives your opponent a chance to just respond, you know, with a Gaia Force, Trump Sword, whatever sort of removal it is they have to get rid of him. So instead, we want to go with this War Greymon because he only costs 3 to evolve, so if we have Tai in play, we can evolve and attack that very same turn. And of course, in addition, he has this awesome skill that says this Digimon doesn't activate security skills on option cards it checks. So this is really good because it means in the mirror match against Red, Gaia Force will not be a factor if you swing with him. And he's an 11k, so if we can get him on top of that Metal Greymon and either of these two, then he becomes a 16k and he doesn't even die to Omnimon. That means that in this format, if you have these Digimon stacked up and you swing into your opponent's security, nothing can harm you. He is completely impervious to any damage. So you just swing into your opponent and you're attacking for 2 security, 3 if you have Tai in play, and a full chain. And there's nothing your opponent can do about it other than block, which is why we're trying to eliminate blockers where possible. And so finally, this is also not going to come as a shock to anyone, but 3 copies of Omnimon. And the reason it's not at 4 is because it's not an Omnimon deck. Yes, it's part of the line. Yes, it helps, but 1, it doesn't get the benefit of Tai, and 2, it is not the point. We're not trying to use Omnimon. He just is another form of removal. But with that being said, the reason he's at 3 rather than 2 copies is because when I was testing the deck, I found that 2 copies just wasn't cutting it. I wasn't seeing him anywhere near enough. There were situations where my opponent was just running wild on me, and I would get to my level 6 and just sort of be stuck there. And this is especially when you're playing against, you know, Red Omni or Blue Omni. If they have an Omni and you don't, you're just really in a pickle. So this is super important, and I don't feel like it's a cheat, because even though the point of the deck isn't this, it's the security attack, it's still part of the line, and we're doing what we're supposed to do here, which is to make a competent deck based on Tai and his partner Agumon. So this is A-OK in my book, and I think 3 copies is just the right amount. Honestly, the only thing I would really consider changing in this deck list right now is maybe bumping up Metal Greymon to 3 copies. I tried him at 4. 4 was way too much because I just found myself seeing him too often and not being able to attack because I didn't want to give my opponent so much memory, and because if I didn't have my chain, then he just dies. 2, I still saw him pretty often, but I do think that he could work at 3. If I was going to put him at 3, I struggle to see what I would drop. Maybe a rookie, maybe drop it down to 13 rookies. I'm at 8 ultimates. I do feel like 9 could be a better number just because I really do like to see my ultimates, and for some reason whenever I'm playing red, I have a tendency to not see them even when I'm running 10 of them. So I could totally see potentially dropping a single rookie for it, but other than that, there's nothing I could really see dropping. Maybe a Skull Greymon, but I think that just having him to set up your plus security attack plays is too important to just run him only at 1. So that's why I think that these are currently the best ratios for this deck, and I think that if you play with this deck, you'll have a good time. It's not going to be the greatest deck, but I think you can take some wins here and there. I think you can have a lot of fun with the deck, and I just think that it's a really cool deck. So with that being said, this has been Tai Kamiya's DigiDestiny fulfilled. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.